One of the most impactful events in any story or show is the death of a major character, and it is a really daring and difficult thing to properly and powerfully execute in any show. In anime, we have seen some iconic character deaths that have been entrenched in our memories. But just killing of a character doesn't always provide the level of impact you want the audience to feel. A writer needs to consider a lot of things to make the death of a character have a long-lasting impact on the story and the audience. Among them, the two most important elements that are absolutely vital to give a character a proper send-off are proper timing and proper consequences. Let us first talk about proper timing. A writer needs to understand what the optimal time to say goodbye to an iconic character could be. Characters are the means by which a writer takes the story in the direction he or she intends to. So, every character the writer creates has a particular part to play in the story, and the motivation of a character is associated with the part he or she is going to play. When the character fulfills his part in the story, he basically accomplishes his objective for which he was motivated. So, there is no more reason left for him to stay in the story anymore, unless the fulfillment of his desires motivates him to accomplish something new. This provides the perfect time to give the character a send-off he or she deserves. A great example of this comes from Season 3 Part 2 of Attack on Titan. In this season, Commander Erwin Smith meets his end while leading a death charge against the Beast Titan. And here the writer Isayama-san chose the perfect time to bid farewell to the iconic commander of the Scouts. The show had already established that the motivation of Erwin was to see what was in the basement and to see if his father was actually correct in his theory, the theory which eventually led to his father's death. If Erwin was able to see what was in the basement, he wouldn't have the relentless drive he had for the past 3 seasons to lead the Scouts, because the sole purpose for which he became the devil that could lead them against the Titans was to know if his father was right all along. Once that was accomplished, he wouldn't have the drive to be that devilish leader anymore. If he was kept alive, he might have become a background character or a commander that would have most likely been a shadow of his former self. It could have ruined the writing and the legacy of this fan-favorite character. Instead of that, Isayama-san decided to give Erwin a hero's send-off. This created one of the most iconic deaths in modern anime, and because the death came at a proper time, the character of Erwin Smith was elevated to a character that will always be remembered as one of the best leaders anime has ever seen. It is always a tough decision to kill off one of your most iconic characters. If a writer hesitates and ends up not killing the character off at the right moment, he or she becomes an aimless character just existing in the story without any significant impact. In that case, even though the character remains physically alive, the spirit of that character perishes. An example of not killing of a major character at the proper time due to this said hesitation would be All Might from My Hero Academia Season 3. The epic fight between All for One and One for All in Season 3 was the perfect time to kill off the symbol of peace that is All Might. It would have been the number one hero's final battle against the great evil, where he selflessly sacrifices everything for saving the world from devastation. He would have gotten an epic goodbye, and his memory would have lived on to motivate other heroes to also give it all up if needed in order to save the people. Instead, he ended up staying alive and remained in the show, not doing anything that important and just existing in the background for over an entire season. Now, I have only seen up to season 4 of Boku no Hero, but every time All Might was on screen, not having any major part to play, I begged the question, why keep your most famous and beloved character as an aimless side note who doesn't really do anything significant for more than a season, instead of making him go out in a blaze of glory and gift the anime world with another iconic moment to remember your show by? This is a great example of what happens when a writer doesn't utilize the proper time to kill off an iconic character when his objective and part in the story had come to an end. The second element needed to carry out a great character death is significant consequences. To make a death have long-lasting impact, there needs to be serious consequences on the story and the living characters from there on out. And those consequences on the living characters will in turn affect their decisions in the future, ultimately taking the story in a different direction and adding a new dimension to it. This point is perfectly portrayed in one of the most impactful character deaths in anime in recent times, the death of Askeladd at the end of Vinland Saga Season 1. After Thor's death, Thorfinn's entire motivation was to avenge his father and kill Askeladd in a duel. Askeladd's death at the hands of another man denied Thorfinn his sole purpose in life. It extinguished his motivation to live on. It emptied him of all that rage that blinded him and took him down a new path in life. This change in Thorfinn, the main character of the story, was a direct consequence of Askeladd's death. This allowed the show to progress in a completely new direction in Season 2. I mentioned earlier that the time when a character loses his ambition or motivation is the perfect time to kill off that character, unless you give him a new set of motivation and a new objective in the story. Thorfinn losing all his prior motivation allows the author, Yukimura Sensei, to use this empty character to show the story from a different angle to the audience, and in the process take the story into a direction where he could deeply explore the ideas that he wanted to from the very start, and drive home the true message of the story. As the show itself says, if you want to be reborn, empty is the best way to be. And that emptiness within Thorfinn that allows him to grow as a character is a direct consequence of Askeladd's death. Now, on the other side of this spectrum, a death that didn't feel as impactful to me as it should have was the death of Paul Greyrat in Mushoku Tensei Season 2, and the reason was that it lacked proper aftermath. Paul is the father of our main character Rudius, so I was under the impression that Paul's death would have a lasting consequence on Rudius' life. And initially that was in fact the case. The immediate consequence of Paul's passing was Rudius going astray and cheating on his wife, who was pregnant with his child at that time. That should have naturally created a long-lasting damage to the relationship between Rudy and his wife, and affect Rudy's life in a major way, and add a new layer to his journey and his relationships. All this would have made Paul's death that much more impactful, as all these major shifts would have been the direct consequence of his death. But his wife immediately accepts another woman as Rudy's second wife and forgives Rudius for cheating. This swift resolution of any possible conflict doesn't allow any long-lasting consequence of Paul's death to take place in the story and stops the development of the plot in any new direction. As a result, Paul's death lacks any lasting influence on the story and just feels like another event that created momentary sadness but failed to become something memorable. Both the writers and the fans of a story or a show want to say goodbye to characters they have followed for so long. The one last time they get to experience a character should be special. The last moments of those characters should be memorable. And the combination of these two elements, proper timing and proper consequences, help in doing justice to those last moments and that final farewell of our beloved characters. Hope you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe if you did, and see you in the next video.